6 tenuous degrees of NCCM, only slightly related to the game 6 Degrees of actor Kevin Bacon. Who is the National Council of Canadian Muslims, or NCCM? NCCM is an independent, nonpartisan, and nonprofit organization dedicated to protecting the human rights and civil liberties of Canadian Muslims, and by extension, of all Canadians. We promote the civic engagement and public interests of Canadian Muslims, as well as challenge Islamophobia and other forms of xenophobia. We have a strong record, spanning 14 years of public service and professional activism. NCCM is fully funded through donations from ordinary Canadians and does not accept money from any foreign governments or groups. In addition to helping individuals who face discrimination, NCCM has participated in major public inquiries, appeared before the Supreme Court of Canada on issues of national importance, and provided advice to security agencies on engaging communities and promoting safety. CAIR-CAN, the predecessor to NCCM, was originally created in 2000 by a group of concerned Canadians in Ottawa who wanted to provide a voice for Canadian Muslims in public affairs. CAIR-CAN was always, from its inception, an independent Canadian organization with its own governance, staff, and resources. CAIR was a strong and established brand among North American Muslims for civil liberties work. So, to use this well-known brand, CAIR-CAN sought and received verbal permission from CAIR, or the Council on American Islamic Relations, a prominent American organization, to use the brand name CAIR, C-A-I-R, here in Canada. This permission was granted, with the understanding that CAIR-CAN would do the same kind of work, the defense of fundamental rights and public advocacy. Like any two organizations with similar work, the groups cooperated on issues of mutual concern, but were always, and remain to this day, completely independent. CAIR-CAN, now NCCM, also worked and continues to work with many other well-known and established civil liberties and social justice groups, including the International Civil Liberties Monitoring Group, Amnesty International Canada, and the Canadian Civil Liberties Association, to name just a few. In the summer of 2013, after a consultative process, CAIR-CAN evolved and the organization became the National Council of Canadian Muslims, or NCCM for short. This decision was made to better reflect the uniquely Canadian focus of the organization's mandate and the actual work NCCM does every single day on behalf of Canadians. When NCCM changed its name, it did so publicly, with launch events, press releases, and pamphlets being distributed to explain the new name and the reasons for the change. There's a whole section on our website explaining the history of NCCM and CAIR-CAN. So why this video? There's a small but well-funded and vicious cottage industry growing in North America whose sole purpose is to attack and smear Muslim organizations in an attempt to marginalize and silence them, not unlike what has happened historically to other ethnic and religious groups in the US and Canada. Thankfully, others too are now starting to document and expose the harmful nature of this agenda-driven business. It's also not unusual that a successful organization whose mandate includes holding to account public officials and advocating for a more just society might have its detractors. Usually, we do not pay much attention to them. Well, at least until recently, when an important office made a serious allegation against NCCM, and we are now forced to set the record straight. So, what exactly happened? It all started back in January 2014. Prime Minister Stephen Harper was scheduled to make his first official trip to Israel and Jordan. It was an exceptional trip in that rather than just take a few political aides, ministers, and government staff, the Prime Minister invited 208 individuals to be part of his official delegation. NCCM, whose mandate includes promoting an inclusive Canada and fighting bigotry, found out that a certain Rabbi Daniel Koropkin had been invited to join the Prime Minister's delegation. Rabbi Koropkin had previously praised and defended two anti-Muslim campaigners, Pamela Geller and Robert Spencer of the American organization Stop the Islamization of America. This group has been designated as an anti-Muslim hate group by respected organizations such as the Southern Poverty Law Center and the Anti-Defamation League. NCCM wrote an open letter to the Prime Minister asking him to reconsider his invitation to Rabbi CAIR-CAN. NCCM believed the legitimacy of the highest office of our land should not be given to an individual who had aligned himself with some of the most anti-Muslim activists in North America. When asked about the letter, the Prime Minister's spokesman chose not to address the actual substance of the concern, whether and why CAIR-CAN would be allowed to participate in the official delegation, but chose instead to attack and defame NCCM. He said, quote, "We will not take seriously criticism from an organization with documented ties to a terrorist organization such as Hamas," end quote. I beg your pardon? From where did you get that allegation? Since making the initial statement, the government has remained hush on this, with one small exception. A certain cabinet minister told viewers of CBC's Power and Politics to Google NCCM and make up their own minds. This is very interesting for two reasons. Firstly, since when did the PMO start outsourcing national security assessments to Google? Isn't that the job of security agencies like CSIS and the RCMP, who, by the way, know us very well after having worked with us on many occasions? Second, and shh, don't tell the minister this, not everything on the internet is true. If it was, we would all believe the moon landing was a hoax and that aliens live among us. And by the way, we've written lots of letters to the government and received lots of responses from various officials in the past. We've also been invited to appear before and have provided advice to numerous parliamentary committees. NCCM's public record is clear. Instead of addressing our legitimate question, the PMO became desperate to distract by throwing mud at us. So, is NCCM affiliated with Hamas or any terrorist organization? The answer is no, 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 and wait for it, no. To explain where this allegation came from, it's useful if you understand the notion of 6 degrees of separation. According to this theory, everyone and everything is only 6 steps away from anyone else in the world. For our more hip viewers, it's like the game 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon, where participants are challenged to find an association between actor Kevin Bacon and another actor in the fewest number of movies. Sounds like a fun game, unless you're a prominent Muslim civil liberties organization accused of being tied to a terrorist group. So, here we go. First degree, NCCM is linked to CAIR-CAN. This is like saying Kevin Bacon is linked to Michael Fassbender through the movie X-Men. Claim, NCCM used to be CAIR-CAN. Veracity, this is true and has never been denied. Second degree, CAIR-CAN linked to CAIR. Michael Fassbender is linked to Michael Pitt through the Academy Award-winning film 12 Years a Slave. Well, actually, the actor in the movie was Brad Pitt, but they do have similar names, right? Claim, CAIR-CAN was in its early days over a decade ago, a branch or arm of CAIR, the prominent American Muslim civil liberties organization. Veracity, tenuous. In fact, CAIR-CAN operated independently of CAIR. Different sources, including media outlets, use different words, branch, sister organization, chapter, to describe the relationship between CAIR-CAN and CAIR. But this does not change the underlying fact that the organizations were independent. CAIR-CAN had its own governance, staff, and controlled its own affairs. But what about that trademark affidavit from 2003 your critics like to point out? CAIR-CAN did get verbal permission from CAIR to use their trademark CAIR in Canada. Those words are legalese for the idea that CAIR-CAN could only use the trademark CAIR as long as its activities were similar to those of CAIR and that its work was done in a comparably professional way. You'll find similar language in many trademark matters. It's nothing unique. It certainly does not mean CAIR controlled CAIR-CAN. It did not whatsoever. Third, fourth, fifth, and sixth degrees are CAIR is linked to a terror group. Michael Pitt is linked to Steve Buscemi, through the movie Delirious, who was linked to Sean Bean through the movie The Islands. Sean Bean played the role of a terrorist member of a fictional lone breakaway group from the Irish Republican Army in the film Patriot Games with Harrison Ford. Therefore, Kevin Bacon is linked to a terrorist group, right? So how does CAIR in the United States respond to the allegations against them? They are a high-profile advocacy organization with over 20 years of public work and are recognized as a tax-exempt organization by the US government. You can check out their response to the recycled accusations here. The bottom line: NCCM has and continues to consistently and categorically condemn terrorism and violent extremism, regardless of who perpetrates it, including naming terrorist groups such as Al-Qaeda, Hamas, and Al-Shabaab. In 2005, our organization coordinated a national statement by over 120 Canadian imams, representing hundreds of mosques across Canada, which denounced terrorism and religious extremism. An initiative that was recognized by former Prime Minister Paul Martin in a meeting with us. NCCM is not linked or affiliated to terrorism or any terrorist groups, period. To say otherwise is false and offensive. Whether it's 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon or 6 degrees of NCCM, guilt by association, especially distant and false associations, is not a way to respond to any group working to help make Canada a better place for all of us. Our entire body of work is public. Check us out at nccm.ca. If you have a problem with anything we actually do, let us know. P.S. Rumors about things we have nothing to do with do not qualify.